In 1974, the ultra-exclusive Dalton School in Manhattan hired a new physics and math teacher. He was charismatic. He was brilliant with numbers. And he was a complete fraud. Jeffrey Epstein didn't have the college degree required to teach. Yet there he was, instructing the children of Wall Street's masters of the universe in calculus. It was his first great con, and it taught him the only lesson he ever really needed. If you act with absolute certainty that you belong in the room, almost no one will ask to see your credentials. But teaching didn't pay enough. He needed to be on the other side of the parent-teacher conference table. Through a parent at the school, the CEO of Bear Stearns, Epstein bypassed the traditional route and landed on the trading floor. He was a shark in an ocean of blood. He wasn't just good at trading, he was good at manipulation. He understood that finance wasn't about math, it was about psychology and leverage. By the time he left Bear Stearns in 1981, under a cloud of minor scandal that he effortlessly brushed off, he had tasted real power. But he was still just an employee. To become a titan, he needed a host. He needed a whale. Enter Leslie Wexner, the retail billionaire behind Victoria's Secret. Wexner was practically American royalty in the 90s, but he was an outsider to the gritty mechanics of high finance. Epstein saw an opening. In a move that still baffles financial historians, Wexner handed Epstein total control. Not just as an advisor, but with full power of attorney over his billions. Epstein became Wexner's financial alter ego. He reorganized Wexner's assets, handled his real estate, and managed his private life. Suddenly, the college dropout from Brooklyn was living in the largest private residence in Manhattan, a house gifted to him by Wexner. He was flying on private jets and buying islands. The official story was that Epstein was a financial genius, earning massive fees by managing billionaire money. But here is where the narrative begins to fray. Even with generous management fees, the math of Epstein's lifestyle didn't add up. He wasn't running a hedge fund visible to the public. He had almost no other verifiable clients. He was spending hundreds of millions, yet his actual investment strategies remained a black box. He had achieved the ultimate capitalist magic trick: unlimited wealth with zero accountability. He had built the facade. Now, he needed to fill it with people. If you ask Jeffrey Epstein what he did, he'd give you a vague, arrogant answer about currency arbitrage or tax strategies. It was designed to make you feel stupid for asking. He used his inexplicable wealth to cultivate a garden of influence. He wasn't just rich, he was a collector of powerful people. He flew presidents, princes, and scientists on his Lolita Express. He funded academic departments at Harvard and MIT. He created a salon where the world's elite felt safe, catered to, and utterly compromised. For decades, whispers circulated in financial capitals. If the Wexner money wasn't enough to sustain this Roman Empire level of decadence, where was the rest coming from? Some theories suggest he was operating a high-level Ponzi scheme, robbing Peter to pay for Paul's private jet. Others point to darker possibilities, that Epstein was a nexus for global money laundering, moving cash for entities that couldn't use traditional banks. And then, the most persistent rumor of all, that Epstein wasn't a financier at all, that he was an intelligence asset. A man funded by a state actor, perhaps American, perhaps Israeli, to gather compromat on the world's most powerful figures. His properties were notoriously wired for sound and video. Was his real business not stocks and bonds, but the acquisition and trade of blackmail? In this scenario, the money wasn't earned, It was operational funding. But in 2008, the invincible facade cracked. In Palm Beach, Florida, the nature of his lifestyle was exposed by local police. He was facing serious federal charges for sex crimes involving minors. His should have been the end. His assets frozen, his reputation destroyed. Instead, something terrifying happened. The system blinked. He received the infamous sweetheart deal, a slap on the wrist, a non-prosecution agreement that practically granted him immunity. He served 13 months in a county jail, allowed to leave 6 days a week for work release. The deal was so unprecedented that it only fueled the darkest theories. Who was powerful enough to protect a man like this from the full weight of the US government? Epstein survived the crash. He returned to New York, a convicted sex offender. Yet he was quickly welcomed back into high society. The money was still there. The connections were still there. He had proven that he was untouchable. And that hubris would be his final undoing. 2019. The world had changed. The hashtag #MeToo movement had shifted the tectonic plates of power. When federal prosecutors in New York took a second look at the Epstein files, the protection that had shielded him for decades evaporated overnight. This time, there was no bail, no sweetheart deal. He was locked in the Metropolitan Correctional Center. And as prosecutors began to peel back the layers of his finances, they found a void. They found a maze of shell companies registered in the US Virgin Islands. They found transfers of millions that made no commercial sense. But they didn't find a brilliant trading algorithm. They found a house of cards built on favors, intimidation, and the proximity to power. So, how did Jeffrey Epstein make his fortune? The uncomfortable truth is that in the highest echelons of power, money changes form. It ceases to be about labor or product. It becomes about access. Epstein's true genius wasn't financial. It was social predation. He understood that the super rich have needs that money alone cannot buy, and secrets they will pay any price to keep buried. He positioned himself as the gatekeeper to a dark playground, and he charged a heavy toll at the gate. His death in a prison cell in August 2019 guaranteed that the full ledger would never be balanced. The precise mechanisms of his income died with him. We are left with a $600 million estate that seemed to materialize out of thin air, and a lingering, unsettling question. If Jeffrey Epstein was merely a con man running a Ponzi scheme, the story ends with him. But if he was the banker for a world of hidden transactions and blackmailed elites, then the real story hasn't even begun.